Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So today we're exploring a truly fascinating and honestly deeply philosophical perspective on real estate, pulled straight from our source material. Usually we just think of landlords and tenants purely in terms of, well, contracts, deposits, and those dreaded monthly payments, right? But the lecture we're breaking down today, it asks us to look at this whole dynamic through a completely different lens, a lens of energy, hierarchy, and, believe it or not, personal growth.
Think about this for a second. What if your real estate contract is actually a spiritual test? It's a pretty provocative thought, isn't it? Our source posits that signing a lease isn't just about finding a place to sleep. It's essentially stepping into a classroom designed for your spiritual and personal development. We're going to analyze exactly how the lecturer defines this unique dynamic and why treating it like just another financial transaction might literally be holding you back in life.
All right, let's jump right into our agenda for today. We're going to cover real estate contract or life lesson, tenants' respect, and the 30-year trap, the universe's energy hierarchy law, the landlord's true role in patience, and finally, we'll wrap up with the cup of tea discernment.
Okay, Section 1. Real estate contract or life lesson, the true nature of renting.
So, according to the lecture we're analyzing today, we need to completely reframe how we look at moving into a rental property. Entirely. The absolute crucial takeaway here is this. A rental is fundamentally a classroom for learning humility. The source argues that when you enter a rental agreement, you're inherently asking for space, right? You're approaching an owner to use their property, which actually requires you to drop your ego. Since you're the one making the request, you have to respect the owner's conditions. It's absolutely not a situation of, hey, I pay you so I can do whatever I want. Instead, it's an active, ongoing exercise in respecting boundaries and conditions set by someone else.
Moving on to Section 2. Tenants' respect and the 30-year trap. The consequences of arrogance.
Now you might be wondering, what actually happens when a tenant refuses to accept this dynamic? Well, it creates a really sharp contrast. If a tenant is constantly fighting the landlord, complaining, or just acting with sheer arrogance, it generates some serious negative energy. And according to the lecture, this doesn't just make your home life miserable, it literally blocks your success in the outside world. Your career, your personal goals, they all just kind of stall out. But on the flip side, if you show respect and adapt to the landlord's conditions, you generate positive energy. And that positive energy fuels your personal growth, turning your rental phase into a temporary stepping stone toward your eventual home ownership.
Which brings us to a really massive number, 30. The lecturer issues a super stern warning here about something called the 30-year trap. Basically, if you fail this specific life lesson by stubbornly clashing with your landlords, the universe is going to make sure you repeat the class. The source claims that people who constantly fight with their landlords will find themselves literally stuck in the cycle of renting for 3 whole decades. Crazy, right? And even if they somehow manage to scrape together the money to buy a place, say 20 years later, that negative energy will cause them to lose it and end up right back in a rental. It's a hugely powerful warning about the long-term cost of a bad attitude.
All right, Section 3. The universe's energy hierarchy law. Why economic disparity exists.
So, this explainer outlines a fundamental law of energy that apparently governs our lives. When someone has more wealth or a higher position, like a landlord for example, they're temporarily placed in a higher energetic position by the universe. But here is the massive key takeaway. The source insists this hierarchy is absolutely not arranged out of malice or for the purpose of oppression, not at all. Instead, being in a temporarily lower energetic position or having less wealth is actually an educational setup. It's an arrangement made strictly for your own personal growth.
You see, this dynamic is actually meant to function harmoniously. The higher energy, in this case the landlord, is meant to pull the lower energy up. In response, the tenant needs to offer respect and a genuine openness to receive that pull. By respecting this setup, the tenant naturally absorbs that higher energy. And this creates a really beautiful synergy where both parties grow, elevate, and succeed together. So the hierarchy isn't some permanent cage, it's actually an energetic ladder.
Let's look at Section 4 now, the landlord's true role and patience, the burden of having more.
Now, the philosophy dictates a surprisingly tough stance for property owners. Get this, helping a tenant blindly actually blocks their learning. Yeah, if a landlord is just a pushover and bails out an unqualified or struggling tenant out of mere pity, they're literally robbing that tenant of a necessary life lesson. And the consequences for the landlord, they are severe. The source warns that if a landlord misuses their higher position by just blindly giving away their resources without testing the tenant's attitude, the universe will step in, and it will strip the landlord's wealth away entirely. The lecture uses some seriously intense imagery here. It states, watching them struggle, shedding tears of blood, this is true parenting and true charity. The source so eloquently compares a landlord's necessary restraint to a parent watching a child struggle. You know, you have the power to help, but you know deep down that stepping in too early ruins their development. A true landlord, acting from a place of higher energy, has got to have the patience to watch the tenant face difficulties, to shed tears of blood internally, basically, waiting until the person is truly ready to ask for help with the right humble attitude, because only then is the assistance actually beneficial.
Finally, Section 5. The Cup of Tea Discernment. Practical Steps for Landlords.
Okay, so how do you practically apply this profound energy law when you're selecting who actually lives in your property? Well, the lecture advises a very specific test. Before signing anything, landlords should sit down and share a simple cup of tea with prospective tenants. You aren't just discussing rent here, you're assessing their energy. You're having a conversation to discern if they're, arrogant bluffers just making demands, or if they're hardworking, humble individuals who are going to treat the space and you with the proper respect.
Now, what happens if they fail this tea test and give off a super entitled energy? The source is incredibly specific about how you need to protect yourself here. You start with a tea, but you absolutely never reject them to their face. Instead, you simply delay. Just say you'll contact them later. Let that immediate energy settle by waiting exactly 3 days, and only then politely decline over the phone, citing a change in circumstances. The lecturer emphasizes that rejecting an arrogant person face-to-face will trigger this immediate clash of bad energy, and that's going to negatively impact your own life. So you've got to manage the rejection smoothly from a distance.
As we wrap up today's explainer, I really want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Are your daily financial transactions actually opportunities for spiritual growth? Whether you're a tenant looking for an apartment or a landlord managing a property, the source material we explore today challenges us to see way beyond the money. It asks us to view every single lease as a mirror reflecting our humility, our respect, and our willingness to learn from the energetic hierarchies all around us. So, next time you sign a contract, ask yourself, what is the universe trying to teach me in this classroom? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and hey, keep seeking those lessons hidden in plain sight.